What's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we're going to take a look over here at the Bitcoin price chart, but we're also going to look at the market cap of Tether. This is a topic I've been meaning to touch on for a little while to kind of show what has happened with Tether and Bitcoin into capitulation moments or into the final phases of a crashing Bitcoin price. We've been down here with Bitcoin for 4 months right now. The great debate out there is whether or not Bitcoin is sitting in a moment like it was in 2018 where it was at $6,000 before it went on to a final capitulation, or if it's like back in 2014 where it was like at $350 before it went on to a final capitulation, or if that moment actually took place from way up in here. And we're working out our bottoming structure in here right now as Bitcoin has made its way back to the last retracement level of our C19 run that we had up in here, sitting at the 786 retracement of the entire move up, pulled all the way back. In addition, we have those moving average crosses that are happening in there that each time this has actually occurred, anytime we've broken through the 100-week moving average in both of these circumstances, that was the bottom in there. But one thing I keep forgetting to go back to has been the price of Tether, or at least the supply dynamics of Tether, and the peg of Tether to the dollar, or the peg of USDT to USD. As we all know, in the moment of the Luna and the UST collapse, we saw the depeg of Tether happen at that same time, not able to maintain itself after doing a really good job staying within there for over a year, bouncing around it really for a couple of years. The last time we ever saw really a big peg loss happen for Tether was way back in here, in these time frames back in here, and here a little bit. But it had not maintained such consistency for as long as it had. It still was kind of volatile around that $1 peg in here till we got really tight, did a good job, boom, lost it. But we saw that happen way back over here too. I mean, look how much it went off there. And you may be saying to yourself, what does that have to do with Bitcoin? And I'm going to show you, because as we know here in 2022, we saw the market cap of Tether or USDT drop by $17.5 billion. So we saw $17.5 billion of Tether disappear from the market from May through early July. And this was coming off of absolute all-time high supply. So this is all of 2021 in here. We saw just the massive amount of Tether printing happening in here. Then right off the all-time high is when the whole chaos started with Luna and UST and USDT losing its peg in here to $1. But the question is, has that happened before? Has there been a moment where Tether lost its peg to the dollar and where supply fell off of the all-time high in such a dramatic fashion? And if you weren't here in 2018, well, then you may be surprised to learn that it actually did happen right here. Because when we zoom out on the actual supply of Tether to see, hey, look, it's just been this nice, beautiful uptrend here in 2020 and 2021. Then suddenly when that craziness happens in the market, we get a big drop in the USDT supply. Look back to history, we see just uptrending. Wait a minute, what's this right here? We have something similar that's going on here where it actually was up at an all-time high and then whoop, it fell all the way down. And so we can kind of zoom out on that really quick to see, wait a minute, okay, we had something similar happening in here where we had just big rising. Look at this. This is 2017. So if you remember correctly, big bull run in the cryptocurrency market in 2017. Big rise in the Tether supply during that time, gets up to all-time highs, then whoops, suddenly we see a big fall in the Tether supply. It's the only time it happens in here, then it goes back to resuming the uptrend with no real reduction in supply happening in here. Then suddenly we fall off of it again. Right back in here in May and June and July was where it finds its bottom. But if we zoom out on this, right, let's go look all the way back into 2016. We can see in the 2017 bull run, we see this just dramatic growth happening here in the supply of Tether. Then it pauses out here in January of 2018 till it finally just plunges over here in November of 2018. Then over here in 2020 and 2021, what do we see? We see just massive growth happening in Tether. Suddenly the growth rate changes right here in May and June of 2021, and then gradually climbs, then finally plunges. And looking back over the course of the last 6 years, these are the only two plunges that you see here in the Tether supply. It is always growing, except for these two moments in time where there were these plunges. So if we know there was a plunge in price in crypto during this moment, if we know there was also a depeg from the US dollar, Was something like that going on here in the cryptocurrency market? And what phase of the market were we in when this happened? So let's look back at 2018 to see what was happening here with the supply dynamics of Tether when it paused out here and then just kind of began this meandering climb before eventually plunging, and just at least look at the dates of what actually happened in here. The big growth in Tether stopped right here in January of 2018. Well, here you go. That's the top of the cryptocurrency market, January of 2018. Then it just begins a meandering climb rather than having this parabolic climb that it's had for so long. It just pauses and then eventually ends up plunging in here. And this plunge takes place in October and November of 2018, which would have been this time period right in here. Suddenly, the supply of Tether started to drastically reduce, and Tether had lost its peg. Now, on this chart, it may look dramatic, but here's a dollar. If we come all the way down here, this is 95 cents. So getting to 95 cents on the dollar per Tether way down here. Up in here, you're still at 99 cents per Tether. But we can see the $1 peg was lost here in October and in November of 2018. The supply dynamic was falling drastically. This is like a 40% drop in the supply of Tether. And then in the coming weeks, capitulation begins and the price of the cryptocurrency market goes on for its final leg down. And so I'll take us off log scale for a moment so we can really kind of see the dramatic of that move. But you can see here in 2017, supply increasing. That parabolic growth rate really pauses here in January of 2018 as the cryptocurrency market comes to a halt. Then the growth rate drastically slows down all the way until October. So during this whole time period, the growth rate has slowed down drastically till finally in early October, Tether loses its peg to $1, and then the supply starts to plunge on Tether shortly after the cryptocurrency market goes on for its capitulation, which, looking at the Bitcoin price chart, it's the same story. Right in here, right before capitulation begins, Tether has lost its peg and the supply dynamic is dropping drastically. Then let's see what happens afterwards. It's bottomed here in mid-November, stays down here just kind of grinding up all the way until April. Then boom, it pops out and gets going. So from November all the way till April, and then in April, boom, it pops out. Let's look down here at Bitcoin, see what's going on at that time. We can see, boom, here we are in November. Boom, we find the actual literal bottom there, December 15th. Goes sideways for a long time. What do you know? Here we are, April. It pops its way up. And here you are in April with Tether supply popping up at the same time. So you spend this time here. So what do we see? We see Tether gets depegged. Tether supply drops by 40%. Cryptocurrency market then goes on to capitulation and finds its bottom, spends months at the bottom, then finally in April, Tether supply rises and the cryptocurrency market rises as well. One thing to take notice of here on the Tether supply is that we can see where it really started to kind of pop out. And you see it clearly with our eyes. We can see it heading out here and happening here on April 8th. Of 2019. It's questionable on whether or not it actually kind of broke out in here on April 2nd. One could argue that it did, April 2nd or April 3rd. When we look at the dates of Bitcoin in here, we could see that this breakout right here for Bitcoin happened on April 2nd of 2019. So the big breakout happened here April 2nd. And this drastic move really started here on April 8th. But was there like a break of this range happening here on April 2nd or April 3rd? It's possible. The reason I bring this up is because we had just talked about how Tether led the way here before capitulation began in late 2018. And it's up for debate here on whether or not did Tether and Bitcoin happen at the exact same time. Did Tether lead the way? I don't think Tether led the way because we could see Bitcoin doing this on April 2nd. And we can see this is the April 2nd candle here for Tether. It's nothing drastic. The drastic stuff starts here on April 8th. So it's just a nuance to pay attention to because I don't want to try to read the data in a way of not being honest with the data, right? And saying like Tether gives the advance warning in every scenario because we can see right in here in this one, they occurred at the same time. This one, it led the way. This one was questionably at the same time or Bitcoin was first. So just something to kind of take note of. One thing to also take note of is by the time Bitcoin did find its bottom here in December of 2018, that was the moment that Tether was able to go back and hit its peg after staying underneath its peg all of October, November, and December. Here on December 19th, it goes back and hits its peg for the first time. Still volatile, bouncing around it, but it did recover it. But again, like I said at the beginning of the video, we're talking about these moments in time, right? There's very split decisions on whether or not people believe this moment is like 2018 where we're at $6,000 or 2014 when we're at $350 before we have this big plunge. What we just witnessed right in here from 2018 was that there was a large reduction in Tether supply and that there was a depegging of Tether from the United States dollar, and we went into capitulation. And this is going to make a whole lot more sense when we get near the end of the video on why this all happened in here and how interesting that is to our current times. So trust me, I am taking you on a path of enlightenment at the end. But we have to build the foundation first. And what we see here is that in 2017, massive rise in Tether, parabolic growth. You can see that in this phase right in here, right? We're just parabolic growing Tether. Then the top of the cryptocurrency market comes in here in January 2018. January 2018, the growth rate slows down drastically all the way until October as the cryptocurrency market dwindles away all the way until October. USDT loses its peg to the United States dollar in October. The supply of Tether then falls drastically by 40%. Shortly thereafter, the cryptocurrency market goes on to capitulation and finds its bottom. Then, from that moment forward, it was a repeat of what had just happened in that the parabolic growth continued all over again for Tether, with never having another one of these major drawdowns here again, all the way up until finally we had one recently in May of 2022. Once again, we see that same thing happening in here, where we see drastic parabolic rising. Suddenly it pauses out in here, and then the growth rate slows down drastically, just as we saw back in 2018, before finally a big move down comes here in Tether. Again, we only see this happening in two spots, right here, and then all the way back here. Dating back to the inception of Tether, there are no circumstances of big falls happening in the Tether supply, except for these two circumstances right here. The one we've been covering from 2018 and the one we've just had here in 2022. So, do we have similar things happening in the market here where the price or the supply of Tether comes and pauses right here, then slows down its growth rate? Do we have the same thing happening in here? We know this moment was the top of the cryptocurrency market back in 2018. What's going on in late May, early June of 2021? Well, unlike being the literal peak like back in 2018, we can see we've already kind of started plunging in here in May of 2021. But to take note, cryptocurrency market had gotten awfully close to already being its all-time high. It only ended up going 16% higher than it already had. After just during the C19 time period, it had risen 2,200%. This is the peak excitement time period in the market. Then from the course of May through June, all the way until 2022, here we are almost 1 year later, 11 and a half months later, Tether starts to fall. What happens in that whole time? Crypto tries to go back up and set a new high, keeps waddling sideways, then finally here in May, boom, crypto starts to fall. But is there anything more we can say about that moment? We only have two circumstances in which this happens, where it falls off the top in a huge way, here in 2022 and back here in 2018, both after doing the same thing, parabolic, grinding up, then falling from the height. Is there anything more we can say about that in the timing of the market if we're attempting to draw some type of conclusion on whether or not this moment is here or if this moment is up in here? And my thesis on the market has been that Bitcoin was not going to go on some brand new big massive run like this, but that we were wrapping up the end of a major super cycle that had started back in 2015. And that, as we've gone through 100 times, you guys have seen it undoubtedly, how we paused in the same area with a crash, retrace, reaccumulation, breakout, crash, retrace, reaccumulation, breakout. that we're deep within this already, but our ending phase in here, our capitulation phase, has been that of the same. But it's not just this one that we've looked at. We've looked back in here a lot. We noticed that Bitcoin was making bear market fractals from the very top, even though it had set a new all-time high. For some reason, Bitcoin was actually making a bear market fractal from the top, as we've seen, where the price behavior of Bitcoin and what it was doing was identical to what happens deep within an actual bear market. Now, what is so special about this moment? Why does this matter? And how does this tie into Tether? Because in the fractal, it showed a capitulation phase coming next within here, which would have been this whole moment in here. And what happened right here? Tether depegged. And the supply of Tether dropped drastically as market participants panicked. That was this moment right here. When did the depegging of Tether happen? And when did the supply of Tether begin to collapse? Right here, at the exact same price level as it occurred back here. And what do we know about 2018? Is that when the collapse of Tether happened and when the depeg of Tether happened and the price of Bitcoin collapsed, it broke through its 100-week moving average to find its bottom. And that here we are in 2022, and as Tether depegs, as the supply of Tether collapses, we break through the 100-week moving average. We precisely follow the structure of what Bitcoin did back in that time period through this whole phase to get to the moment of the exact same price level within the fractal for Tether to depeg, for the supply of Tether to drop, and for Bitcoin to capitulate. It has only happened 2 times in Tether's history, and it happened in the same price levels at the exact same time that it was breaking through the 100-week moving average in both circumstances, 2018, 2022. And as we've discussed in previous videos, in both of these circumstances in here, right, as it goes back and it hits its 200-day moving average, both in 2018 and over here in 2022, it falls 63% in 2018, and it falls 63% in 2022, with the breakdown of Tether happening from the same spot in both of them, as they both break through the 100-week moving average, as they both dip into oversold weekly RSI for the first times in their cycles, and as they both dip down into the 40s on the monthly time frame. So we only have 2 data points throughout history to see something like that happening for Tether and then for Bitcoin at the same time. That's the capitulation phase of 2018, and that's our current phase right now. That's not many data points to look back on. But when we look at 5 years of data, I mean, really it dates back to 2015, right? So we're at, 7.5 years. It's only happened 2 different times. And the one time that it did happen, it marked the absolute ending of the market heading into the capitulation phase. And it happened at a price level of the exact same fractal that we had play out from the very top of Bitcoin. And then the depegging of Tether happened at the exact same level in 2022. So let's take a look at what happened with Tether after that happened back in 2018. We can kind of take a peek at it here and see what occurred. When did Bitcoin recover? When did Tether recover after this fall took place? We can see the fall started around here. Let's see if we can get a better look at it. No, not any better like that, but we could see how the fall took place in here. Enough time elapsed, and well, we're kind of getting near of how long it took before things ended up recovering here. And what we do definitely see in here for Tether is that it has been kind of slowly grinding its way back up. So again, this has only happened one other time in history for the last 7.5 years for Tether. It was at the actual bottom when it happened. Once it started recovering, the bottom was already in. And then out of nowhere, the printing began and Bitcoin popped up. And from a time perspective, we've gotten pretty close to the amount of time that elapsed back in 2018. So I found this very interesting. I don't see anybody talking about this out there, but this is another check mark for the moment of Bitcoin being back here and the depegging of Tether from $1, the massive supply drop in Tether as the panic hit the market to say capitulation happened through the 100-week moving average as it did back in 2018. So I know there's a lot of people out there trying to draw the conclusion from Bitcoin and saying that, we have to keep going down because we haven't pulled down 84% like we have in the past 2 major falls that have happened there for Bitcoin. and drawing conclusions from these past corrections for Bitcoin to say that's what we have to do here from a percentage standpoint and from a time standpoint. But what I've been trying to show on here is when you don't look at it from just saying percentage and time, and you look at every other element that has happened here for Bitcoin, it has already played out all the elements that have occurred once the bottom had already come in for all of them. We've seen it break through the 100-week moving average. We've already seen the 50 and the 100 weeks cross each other, which signified the bottom had already been in. We've talked about relative strength coming down into oversold conditions for the weekly time frame and hitting the bottoming levels for the monthly time frame as well. And then now we see also like the fundamental break that also occurred in here as we broke through the 100-week moving average, with the supply of Tether dropping off drastically and with it depegging itself from the US dollar, which was also the same thing that happened to Bitcoin as it was breaking down through here with the exact same fractal from that time, and the depegging of Tether and the supply drop of Tether happening from the same locations within here. So I point all these things out to not be a fortune teller, because price can do whatever it wants. But if we're going to draw conclusions from 2014 and from 2018, there are way more things stacking in the favor of the bottom has already actually happened for Bitcoin than not. And my thought process is, if we break lower on Bitcoin, suddenly all these things don't matter for Bitcoin anymore. And should that happen for Bitcoin, we would see something happen on the relative strength of Bitcoin on the monthly time frame that only happens in massive bear markets. And that's when you have relative strength, it's that you will hover above 40 and you will bounce up and you'll find 40 as a support, bounce up and find 40 as a support. And we can see right now with where Bitcoin is, it's at these lows that it's gone down to each time. You can see as it gets here, it dips just below it during its capitulation phase. As we can see right here, it dips just below it in its capitulation phase, but still maintaining this 40 over here. For relative strength in a bull market, you remain above 40 and you bounce off 40, above 40 and you bounce off 40. If we dip below 40, it means the monthly trend on Bitcoin is bearish, and that what we're all used to is this, but it then becomes this, as in these are the price levels that become of interest. And a lot of people will think that's FUD that I even bring that up, even though I have spent the entire video trying to explain we have done everything that signifies that the capitulation has already occurred in here, including the depegging of Tether and the massive supply drop in Tether, just like we did back in 2018. So I'm cheering for this. This is what I want to be the case. I want to see us recover from here. That would be fantastic. But for those looking for one more drop to come, we then destroy everything. And so if that does happen, if we do get that next drop, then we have to start saying, wow, this has never happened before, where Tether depegs and the supply massively drops, but then still Bitcoin keeps going down, or it breaks through the 100-week moving average, the 50 and the 100-week cross each other, but yet it still keeps going down. Or wow, we dip into oversold territory just like we do every time, but yet even though it's marked the bottom every time, we still keep going down. You have to understand, it presents a lot of different problems if we keep going down. But we have seen an absurd amount of characteristics already occur from the indicators and the price behavior that have happened when the bottom actually already happened. So, food for thought. And hopefully, we're much closer to this thing being over than a lot of us think. But all right, guys, that's going to be it for this one. I hope that you enjoyed this content. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed. But on that note, I'll go ahead and wrap this thing up. All right, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you could be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.